the confidence illusion that built empires. It began with a belief so powerful it reshaped entire economies. A shared confidence that growth was not only possible, but inevitable, that markets would expand, profits would compound, and institutions would always find a way forward. This belief did not just support empires, it created them. To understand why this illusion still matters today, we have to return to a moment when confidence became the most valuable asset in finance. More valuable than capital, more influential than policy. Confidence unlocked credit, attracted investment, and justified expansion on a scale never seen before. As long as people believed, systems grew stronger simply by growing larger. At first, the results looked miraculous. Small firms became giants. Regional banks turned into national powerhouses. Entire industries rose on the assumption that tomorrow would be bigger than today. Confidence was rewarded, reinforced, and celebrated. Those who hesitated were left behind. Those who leaned were praised as visionaries. This belief spread quietly but relentlessly. Success became proof. Expansion justified itself. Each new layer of growth made the system appear more stable, not less. After all, how could something so large, so interconnected, so essential ever truly fail? The size of the empire became its own defense. But beneath this confidence lay an assumption rarely questioned. That belief itself could substitute for limits. That scale reduced risk instead of redistributing it. That momentum could replace caution. And as long as confidence remained unbroken, the illusion held. The early signs were easy to ignore. Debt increased alongside growth. Complexity deepened. Institutions became dependent on constant expansion to justify their structure. Yet confidence masked vulnerability. When belief is strong enough, warning signals sound distant and abstract. This was a reveal beginning to form. Empires were not built on stability alone. They were built on expectation, on the assumption that confidence would always arrive before doubt. And as long as that assumption held, the illusion felt indistinguishable from reality. But confidence is not a foundation. It is a force, and forces, when pushed too far, eventually reverse direction. As confidence deepened, it began to shape decisions in subtle but powerful ways. Expansion was no longer just encouraged. It was expected. Institutions structured themselves around perpetual growth, building systems that required constant inflows of belief to function smoothly. Success depended less on resilience and more on momentum. Credit flowed freely under this assumption. Lending standards relaxed not because risk vanished, but because confidence redefined it. If growth continued, debts would be serviced. If markets expanded, valuations would justify themselves. The future was treated as a solution rather than an uncertainty. And as long as confidence remained intact, this logic appeared sound. Investors reinforced the illusion. Capital chased scale. Size signaled safety. The larger an institution became, the more trust it inspired, attracting even more capital. This feedback loop rewarded expansion above all else. Prudence looked like hesitation. Caution looked like missed opportunity. Inside organizations, this belief reshaped culture. Risk managers were pressured to align with growth narratives. Concerns were softened, reframed, or postponed. Questioning confidence meant questioning success itself. And success, visible everywhere, felt undeniable. The system adapted to this environment. Structures optimized for expansion became fragile under contraction. Costs assumed growth. Debt assumed stability. Complexity assumed coordination would always hold. The illusion was no longer just belief. It was embedded in architecture. The reveal sharpened. Confidence had stopped reflecting reality. It was creating it. Markets were not responding to fundamentals alone, but to expectations layered on expectations. Empires stood tall not because they were invulnerable, but because doubt had not yet arrived. Yet this dependence carried a hidden tension. The system required confidence to remain constant or increase. Any pause threatened exposure. Any doubt risked reversal. Growth was no longer optional. It was structural necessity. The early conflict took shape here, not between institutions, but between belief and resilience. Confidence fueled expansion, but left little room for error. The larger the empire grew, the more sensitive it became to shifts in sentiment. The illusion still held, but it was tightening its grip, and when belief becomes mandatory, the cost of losing it rises sharply. The illusion began to crack the moment confidence hesitated. Not collapse, hesitated. A slowdown here, a misprojection there. Nothing dramatic, nothing that should have mattered. But in a system built on expectation, even small pauses carry weight. Growth decelerated just enough to expose dependencies. Cash flows tightened. Debt servicing grew less comfortable. Structures designed for expansion found themselves awkwardly overbuilt. The empire still stood, but it no longer felt effortless. Investors noticed a shift. Capital became selective. Questions replaced assumptions. Valuations stopped climbing automatically. And with that shift, the feedback loop reversed. What once attracted confidence now required justification. The same size that had signaled safety now amplified concern. This was the emotional peak. Not panic, but realization. The understanding that confidence had been doing more work than anyone admitted. That growth had masked fragility. That belief had been carrying weight once reserved for fundamentals. Institutions scrambled to restore the narrative. Forecasts were revised. Assurances were issued. But reassurance arrived into a changed environment. Confidence, once abundant, now required proof. And proof took time the system did not have. As doubt spread, behaviors synchronized. Expansion plans were paused. Investment slowed. Credit tightened. Each defensive move made sense individually. Together, they drained momentum from a system built on constant motion. The conflict reached its core. Empires were not collapsing because they were weak. They were straining because they were optimized for belief. When belief faltered, even briefly, the structure revealed how much it depended on continuation. This was a turning point. The illusion could no longer sustain itself without reinforcement. And reinforcement required the very confidence that was slipping away. The buildup was complete. The next phase would determine whether the illusion could be restored or whether reality would assert itself. And reality does not negotiate with expectations. The illusion did not shatter all at once. It unraveled. Confidence retreated in stages, and with each step back, the empire lost more what had held it together. Growth no longer covered inefficiency. Size no longer guaranteed safety. The assumptions that once felt unquestionable now demanded evidence. The climax arrived in the recognition that belief alone could not sustain structure. When expansion slowed, obligations remained. Cost persisted. Complexity did not shrink with confidence. The system had been built for a world where trust flowed freely. Without it, pressure concentrated rapidly. The resolution forced a recalibration. Institutions reduced scale. Expectations were reset. Growth was replaced by sustainability as the primary goal. The empire did not vanish, but it changed. Leaner, more cautious, less dependent on continuous belief. What emerged was not failure, but realism. Confidence regained its proper place, not as a foundation, but as a byproduct of strength. Stability was rebuilt around fundamentals rather than expectation. Growth returned, but slower, earned rather than assumed. The lesson endured. Confidence can build empires, but it cannot replace structure. When belief is mistaken for stability, systems become vulnerable to the very force that once empowered them. Empires last not because people believe in them, but because they can function when belief fades. So what do you think? Are we repeating the same mistake again?